Dante's Divine Comedy, Inferno, Canto the Fifth.
They started going into the abyss. They went through limbo, where they saw the light that was the small glimmer of joy that God gave them. I don't remember what happened after that.
They've made their way down to the second ledge, Limbo being the first ledge. The first thing they run into is Minos, judging the souls as they go farther into hell.
Like the Greek mythological...
Oh yeah, in many mythologies, he's deemed good enough to be able to judge souls. Here, though, he's interpreted as kind of beast-like. He's not described fully, but one thing that's made clear is he has a very long tail. As the souls come up to him, they immediately confess all of their sins. No hesitation, holding nothing back. They'll say it all. Minos will decide, well, okay, here's where you go because of the things you've done. And then he'll wrap his tail around them once for each layer down they have to go.
Oh, wow.
So if they have to go down to layer 7, he'll wrap their tail around them 7 times. And then the way I picture it is he picks them up and flings them in. They fall down to the right ledge.
That's so weird. It seems like a little bit impractical. Like, people would be waiting for a while, because there's a lot of people that die all the time, you know?
I would think having one guy would be kind of a bottleneck, yes. I don't know how he does it all. Virgil and Dante start to go around him, and Minos kind of calls out, like, well, hold on a second. Where do you think you guys are going? I gotta send you to hell. Virgil does what he's been doing, what he's going to continue doing. He flashes this little God card saying, like, we're on a mission from God. We're going to keep going this way.
It feels like that's going to happen a lot, where they keep running into people that are like, you shouldn't be here, or you're doing something wrong, or whatever, and they're just like, oh, no need to worry.
I think the idea is this is so unusual. This never happens, and it's never going to happen again.
Right.
So no one's prepared for this, right? There's no protocol for when living people are touring through hell. So everyone's like, no idea what's going on. Like, what in the world? As they start to really enter the second layer, Dante hears these immense cries of anguish, even more than before. They're even like louder and more terrible. And he actually says that it sounds like the full force of hell's torment. In a sense, they've kind of entered the first area where people are really being punished. This is the second layer, but Limbo was kind of a little bit lessened. They're okay people, they just couldn't trust in God. The place down here, it's very dark and incredibly windy. There's strong, powerful winds blowing everywhere. He sees the wind blowing around these souls, which are screaming in pain and confusion and cursing God everywhere they go. The people who are being tortured here are those who are guilty of committing sins of love and lust. You can imagine a lot of sexual sins, things like that. They're on sort of a outer layer as opposed to more inner layers, because while they did sin and they do have to be punished for it, Dante at the very least seems to be a little bit more forgiving of sins that have to do with love, because you know, love isn't necessarily a bad thing, but they did bad things with it.
Somehow that kind of makes sense coming from Italy. Like, it seems like they just have a strong emphasis on love in general, and so it makes kind of sense why he's more forgiving of that.
Dante asks Virgil to tell him who the people here are individually, and Virgil starts pointing out at people and saying, oh, that's who that is, that's who that is. One person here is Dido. She had a husband, but she was in love with someone else, and that someone else died, and so she killed herself. There is another layer in hell for suicides, but because she killed herself out of love, she's here instead.
From all the different ways that they can categorize who should be in what layer or section of the afterlife, it feels like there could almost be an afterlife insurance agency with committees that has to plan out all of this with different departments. Like, oh, no, that's the suicide department. They handle those kinds of things. And, we got to sort this out with love affairs.
You could make it very bureaucratic. Thankfully, there's only one guy who does it all, right? It's Minos is the guy who does that stuff. They don't worry about bureaucracy or paperwork. It's just like one guy is like, nope, you're going there. People here include Cleopatra, Achilles, Paris. All in all, Virgil points out thousands of people. Dante is very moved and hurt and confused at what he sees, to the point where like he's trying to like hold back tears. He feels so bad for these people. He sees one sad couple floating around together, and he points at them and says, can I speak to those guys over there? Virgil says, I mean, if you want to, just call them over. He calls to these two, it's a man and a woman kind of floating through. He calls them down and he asks who they are. The woman, he tells a little bit of her story. She fell in love with her husband's younger brother. They were having an affair until at one point her husband caught them both and killed them.
Interesting.
And so now they're here. Dante is very moved by the story. He tears up like he's just watched a sad movie. And he asks how they died. There's a quote I want to read from the translation. The first thing she says when Dante asks her to recount how she died, she says, "The double grief of a lost bliss is to recall its happy hour in pain." She goes on to recount what happened. Her and her lover. So it says that they were in her bedroom. I like to imagine that they were like reclining on her bed specifically.
Oh, yeah.
They were reading some super soppy romantic book together. One of them was reading it out loud to the other. And every now and then they would pause from reading to just look in each other's eyes every few lines.
Oh my god.
At one point they read a very specific passage and then he like leans in and starts kissing her. This is as far as their story goes. I like to imagine they went a little bit farther than kissing.
Yeah, probably. I would think so. This already sounds like an Italian thing for some reason to me.
Yes.
You dirty Italians.
Yes. While they're doing whatever they're doing, whether it's kissing or more, her husband surprises them, jumps in, and kills them.
Oh, wow.
Right then and there. And she assures them that he's still alive, but when he dies, there's a place further down in
okay.
hell, which is reserved for him. Once she gets to this part, the guy who's with her starts crying and wailing, just remembering the sadness of it all. And Dante is so moved by this that he swoons, and this is actually the second canto where it ends with him passing out. So that is the end of Canto 5.
That is such a hopeless romantic thing to do.